everybody for giving me the strength to wake this morning and to come out to the Cheryl Stevenson Tuesday morning breakfast to share some thoughts on public school governance. My name is Arthur Griffin. I serve on the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commission, and you would say Charlotte Mecklenburg Board of Education. And it's certainly a delight to come back home. I've been a participant with the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday morning breakfast for many, many years. Talking with one of the leaders, Laura McCletty, one of the questions came up and talked about public school governance. And I said I'd certainly come and share some ideas and some context about what public school governance is all about. Certainly, you know, the public schools are in the news today, and I'm certainly not here to call balls and strikes about what's actually taking place, because I don't know all the facts about what's going on with CMS today. So what I am here to talk about is how to create a good public school governance system where student success is not dependent upon one actor, but on a governance structure that consistently produces better outcomes for students. Real quickly, I'm going to talk just a little bit about my experience, because some folks reached out and say, well, what kind of experience do you have in terms of public school governance? I'm going to also talk about what's called churn and how to minimize churn in the public school process. Just a little bit about myself. Not only am I a graduate of Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, my wife's a graduate of Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, my children and grandchildren are graduates of Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, and I still got one at South Mecklenburg High School. But I got involved with public schools in 1974 when Roland Jones got fired on public TV. And about 1975 to 1985, I attended about 90% of all public school meetings here in Mecklenburg County. There were two other individuals that attended that level of commitment to school meetings. One was Anel Houck. I don't know the name of the other lady, but we attended about 90% of all meetings. I learned a lot during that process from 75 to 85. I'm not an educator, no formal training in education, but Elizabeth Randolph sparked an interest in me. She was an African-American educator here that challenged me. She said, "You were so concerned, what do you know about education, Arthur?" And she guided me during that decade, along with Cat Crosby, Charlotte Hampton, Pop Mill, just a lot of people who put their arms around me to try to help me understand the teaching and learning process and how to manage that process. Although I'm not an educator, I learned what teaching, reading, and the content area is all about. I understand tracking, I understand budgeting, etc. It's just a long journey for me from 1975 to 1985, and I swore that I'd never become a politician. And what happened? In 1985, I got appointed to the Charlotte Mecklenburg Board of Education, and when everything was at large back in the old days, when I ran in 1986, I didn't get elected. So I turned around in 88 and got elected every since 1988 on the Charlotte Mecklenburg Board of Education. And why is that so important? It gave me an opportunity to work with multiple superintendents and different groups of school board members. In 1985, Jay Robinson was the superintendent. He was the longest serving superintendent in Charlotte Mecklenburg, outside of those back in the 40s and 50s. Jay Robinson served for 10 years as superintendent here in Charlotte Mecklenburg. I came in on the tail end of Jay Robinson's tenure, but I was there for Peter Relic, who came after Jay Robinson. I was there for John Murphy and Eric Smith and Jim Pusey. Now keep in mind, Jay Robinson was there for 10 years. Peter Relic was only there for 3, John Murphy was 5, Eric Smith was 6, Jim Pusey for 3. And during that period, 2 of those superintendents were fired. So I do have some experience about transition. That's why I have a little experience in terms of public school governance and how to make sure that we keep the main thing, which is student achievement. I had an opportunity to join a guy out of Houston Texas, named Don McAdams, and created something called the Center for Reform of School Systems. And we wrote a curriculum for school board governance, and we worked with school boards in the state of Texas for a number of years. A billionaire out of Los Angeles named Eli Broad bought the program, and we started working with school boards around the country. That's what I was trying to share with the young man here. I was out in Denver working with that school board. I had an opportunity also, Bob Peterkin out of Harvard Graduate School of Education asked me to do some work with a program he led called the Urban Superintendents Program, where I worked with wannabe urban superintendents in trying to work with them to share with them experiences of what good public school governance looks like. Subsequent to that, we had a lot of good work with the University of Virginia with their education partners of leadership. And just over the course of all of those experiences, I developed some skills and experiences about what good public school governance looks like. In 1992, I had an opportunity to also work with NAEP. NAEP is the National Assessment for Educational Progress. That's the group up there that sets the national standards, and kids are sampled across the nation every year since 1969 to say, this is where American kids are, American schools are. And I had the pleasure of working on fourth grade math for 2 years with NAEP. And that was in 92. So around 95, when we were getting ready to hire a superintendent, I brought that experience with me to the forum with respect to what good governance looks like and what to expect out of a superintendent and what we should be doing as we prioritize public schools. When you change superintendents, a lot of churn occurs. And what do you mean by churn? When superintendents come in, the senior staff changes, principals change, people assignment change, there are new initiatives, there are disruptions to the organizational culture, and our students deserve better. Because every time you change abruptly, it really reverberates down the chain of command, down to the classroom, and it really has a negative impact on the students. Today, everything is digitized. So when I say churn, I got something just to show you. Just visualize this for a moment. This is one superintendent's document in 1988, where I was on the school board. Here's another superintendent's document in 89. Churning was really moving. I see my old colleague back there, Louise and George and Wilhelmina. Here's another churn in 1990. Here's another churn in 1992. Here's John Murphy's in 1991. Okay, Custodians in 92, who worked for John Murphy. Here's Eric Smith's churn in 1999. Every time there is a new superintendent, there are new strategic plans, there are new ideas, there's a new culture in town. And if you don't manage that appropriately, it actually has a negative impact on the teaching and learning in the individual classrooms. Now, what did I learn after all of this? We used to have a song back in the old days called "It's Cheaper to Keep Her." Let's try to figure out, if we can, how to work with the superintendent to the extent that you can. You know, sometimes you can, and then sometimes things change from no fault of anyone. Like Jay Robinson, for example, he retired. There was nothing, wrong in that perspective. Eric Smith left Charlotte for better opportunities. So understand when change occurs, you have to make sure that your community's education values are first and foremost, and that is student achievement. You also have to manage the institution, and you also have to have a keen eye on fiscal responsibility. Now, what did we do differently in 1995? Some of you may have been around when John Murphy left. he didn't leave in a very ceremonious way. So we had an interim superintendent who was searching for a superintendent. John Lassiter, myself, and Susan Burgess, these were school board members, went out and had a beer on Park Road and said, all right, we've been through a number of superintendents. What are we going to do now? And we said, let's figure out if we can hire a superintendent that would agree for measurable objectives in their contracts as it relates to student performance. And we found one, and that was Eric Smith. He came from a small district, I think it's Newport News, if I'm not mistaken, in Virginia. But he agreed to have measurable objectives in his contract. And those objectives came from the board through the community. What do I mean by that? There were three things in the original contract. One was student safety, because we had a student get killed at Miles Park. Student safety was absolutely in that contract. The next was community collaboration. The previous superintendent did not want to communicate with various partner organizations or the news media. So communications was very important, that the superintendent would be able to work with other community groups and folks throughout the community without being forced to do that. And then the third piece of that was safety, community collaboration. What did I say? The main thing. Student achievement, student performance. Those are three things that this superintendent allowed us to put in this contract. It was the first time that any urban superintendent that was a member of the council of Great City Schools had actual measurable objectives in that contract. A couple of years later, we expanded that. We added two more things. And one was equity, and the other was efficient and effective support operations. And for the superintendent to get a bonus, he had to meet certain specific objectives, measurable objectives in that contract. Therefore, we agreed to hire Eric Smith, and it was like a prenup. You know, when you get married these days, you want to make sure that there's an understanding and expectations on both sides. That's what we actually had with this contract with this superintendent. And it actually helped. We instituted something called a balanced scorecard. We instituted SMART goals, specifically telling you at the end of 4 years where we wanted third grade students and what kind of decrease you wanted in terms of the disparities between white students and black students. And it really helped because the community was aware of what the expectations were. It created enormous transparency. And every year there was a report to the community. And if we needed to make adjustments, we in fact made adjustments. That's how we were successful in doing a number of different items. I have something here. I only have a cover of it to kind of give you an idea. This is a 2010 equity report. We started this in 99 or 2000, I can't remember what year. But in the equity report that went to the whole community every year by the superintendent, we had an Excel spreadsheet in here that says what percent of 0 to 3 year experienced teachers were at some of the schools, from national board certified. All the things that the public had shared with the school board in terms of what their concerns were, not only just academics, but everything around equity was in this report. It was from 100 to 150 pages every year. And it went to the public. And the public would react in terms of what's happening with low-income schools, or schools who are predominantly black, or what's happening in terms of advanced placement courses. We instituted something very simple. We said there'd be no school that had less than, this was in the 90s, 12 advanced placement courses. Because some schools, like Myers Park, had 30, or Providence had 28. West Charlotte may have had 3. So we instituted standards and we published those each and every year. Those things were critically important in terms of keeping the priority of student achievement in front of us, with transparency to the public, so if things would bubble up, they would bubble up in a way that we would manage those. And it also really created a culture of excellence that was expected by this community at large. Look at the time back there in the back to make sure we have enough time for questions. But when you look at public school governance around the country, and you look at the tenure of superintendents, you try to make sure that that marriage up front is the right marriage. And that's why I spent so many years not being on the school board, but understanding what school board is all about, what teaching and learning is all about. And once you do that and you communicate with the public, you work for the public if you're a school board member, or if you're an elected official, anybody, you work for the public. So you want to make sure that what you are doing is reflective of what the public wants. And we tried to do that until one point where the public said to us, school desegregation might be a little different, and we were sued in federal court and spent a lot of time going back and forth trying to maintain school desegregation. But what I should always tell folks is, and also telling the superintendent, let the Board of Education, let the electeds deal with school desegregation in the courts. You keep your eye on the prize, which is making sure that academics are taken care of on a day-to-day basis. And so the mechanisms, the policies and things that were in place helped us to get into Time Magazine, Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report. We had one school, one of the current school members now, Dr. Curtis Carroll at Harding High School. We had to turn people away. So many folks wanted to go to Harding because that was one of the schools that was really in most of the news media around the country in terms of recognizing student equity and student success here in Mecklenburg County. I'm going to stop to see if I can entertain questions because I got 5 minutes.
Okay.
I can't see. It's like
I can see
You
it.
got
eight.
You got about 8 minutes.
8 minutes. That's needed to make a transition for Attorney Sumter and for our clerk of Superior Court. So, any questions?
Roslyn, take it.
You mentioned culture, which
Oh,
I
wait a
think
minute,
is,
I need,
I'm sorry.
Andrew, wait a minute, this is my grandson, I'm gonna let him take my
You mentioned culture, which is such a critical issue, and I'm asking this question from a place of genuine curiosity. Philosophically, is it the board's responsibility to set the culture and then hire a superintendent who fits that culture, or is it the expectation that the superintendent will come in and set the culture for the district?
You know, Rob, it's like a marriage. It takes two. During the negotiations of the process as you're interviewing different individuals to be the superintendent, you try to assess as best you can if their values, if their vision, if their goals are similar to what the community's education values are. And you go back, you get on an airplane, you go back to those districts, you talk to people in those communities to make sure that that presentation is valid, to make an assessment in terms of whether or not, you are compatible in terms of where you want to go. But I do think a lot of that is with the Board of Education. Because if excellence, if academic excellence is the key coming from the community, and you share that with that superintendent, and you do your due diligence with your research. I've worked with lots and lots of superintendents here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Not every one of them said how much they support high student achievement. They all said they believed in equity, and they all didn't deliver. So you have to make an assessment as a board to make sure that there's a match in terms of value.
Okay, do we have another question? Any other questions?
Questions or complaints? I take either, I take both.
Okay, well, are we sure? Okay, if we have no more questions, we want to thank you so much for coming and giving a presentation this morning.
I love this. All right.